I'm first going to sort of vaguely introduce greenhouse effect on greenhouse gases. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it one way or the other. And then go into what solutions there are and what we can do to contribute to, reducing carbon from the planet, and what the potential dangers are if we don't. All right, part one. What is the greenhouse effect? It is, what happens in a greenhouse. Sunlight comes in before it gets out. So normally we're in a planet with trees and all green plants. We like the sunlight, right? We don't really want to block it all together because even as humans, we have vitamin D in us that we produce when we are under the sun, living under the sun. But it gets kind of dangerous if there's too much of it because of some gases around like carbon dioxide, methane, hydrofluorocarbons, and what we call greenhouse gases. What they do is they trap the sunlight from going back out, and this keeps heating up the planet. And that can be dangerous because like in a greenhouse, you want the plants to be warm, but as humans, we don't want the planet to be constantly getting hotter and hotter at a rate that will make it impossible for us to live, right? We don't want snowfall to completely disappear. We want sort of a sweet spot of all seasons to be healthy humans and to be able to make crops at every stage. The biggest physical impact of the greenhouse effect is, as I mentioned, rising temperatures. So this is from a study where they took the average temperatures on Earth in the 80s up to the 2020 and compared it to average temperatures in the 50s. And between 80 and...
you said football.
Between 80 and 84, there wasn't anything alarming, but the closer we get to 2019, and this is 2022, we actually have a lot of anomalies in temperature that is just very concerning. Overall, this is only about a 2 degrees Fahrenheit increase as an average between 80s and 2022, which, when you think on a daily basis, 2 degrees Fahrenheit, who cares, right? But the fact is, between the Ice Age and today, there's only 10 degrees Fahrenheit difference. So actually, a 5 degrees Celsius difference can make a huge impact on the climate. And if we, get 5 more degrees or like 10 more degrees Fahrenheit, is actually going to make all the ice melt in the North Pole and the South Pole. There's none left. And it's really going to cause some challenges. Right, so we are kind of starting to see this. There are some extreme weather events like hurricanes. And as this ice melts and gets into the atmosphere, there is going to be a lot of water in the atmosphere. But because we don't have a lot of cold weather, it won't be condensing and turning into rain or snowfall, which causes the forest to, not be as plenty as it used to be, causes deforestation. As water melts and rains on instead of snowing and starts carrying water like from up the mountain down through the river into the sea or ocean, it can carry a lot of mud with it. And the reason for that is mostly the less and less many trees and plants there are, the less their roots are able to hold that soil with it. So the river just keeps carrying all the soil with it. And this fills in rivers, right? So what used to be flowing water is now filled with land, which means the next time the rain comes in, it's just going to flood around, right? Which can really devastate living areas around it. This is from my project, I think last year from Hack Zurich. We used ArcGIS to model what would happen if temperature rises 2 more Fahrenheit overall on the planet. And sort of that causes the sea level to rise 1 to 2 meters. And this is all the areas that will be underwater, which is pretty sad. So Europe, Florida, places that are really low in elevation are very under high risk of being surrounded by water in the next few years. Another disrupted ecosystem happens when oceans get acidified. This is when the carbon dioxide in air joins with water to produce carbonic acid, and then that dissolves into carbonate and bicarbonate. What happens when that happens is the ocean gets like higher in acidity. Anyways, the bicarbonate ions that are around causes the corals to release the living creatures like algae that live on them, and they take this really white color, which means they're now deprived of nutrition and they're very likely to die. And things that feed off the algae and all this nutrition also die, like as a chain reaction. This causes really low, like it really hurts species that live around the coral. And this is called coral bleaching, and also causes, as a result, loss of biodiversity. This is a graph that shows the overall number of species that used to be in the 1970s. Now we're down 70%. That means, like as an example from literature, if you believe in Noah's Ark, for every 10 animals, we cause 7 of them to die. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? We can still solve this. What are carbon poor solutions? These are practices we can start participating in that reduces carbon emissions in the atmosphere and many other greenhouse gases that in turn will make the sunlight go back out more efficiently so that we can actually go back to where we started and hopefully slow down and hence global warming. Right? Earth will still warm up a little bit, but it doesn't have to be at this rate. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to only focus on these two that I think we can actually address today. In the circular economy or circularity of materials, when you produce something, if you can recycle it, like say we are building crypto farms, right? Once they're closed or as they're functioning, you get rid of parts. If you can recycle them, that is greener for you. So it can contribute to the recycle of stock materials. But, the another example is in sort of biological things. Let's say an animal eats plants, and then once they pass, you can use their body to make soap, and then, they fertilize the environment back to producing more crops that can feed more animals in sort of like a circularity aspect of it. This can be an economy. Like why we really like smaller markets is because like if you live in a small city that is not open, let's say, to outside resources, and you're in a farm, you make crops, you sell them, an electrician buys them, produces more electricity for you, you pay the electrician to get electricity for yourself, sort of like a circularity aspect of it. As opposed to if you ship your electrical materials or like call an electrician from another city that derives to you, burns a lot of carbon, it's not very circular.
Coming down.
And circular versus growth example here. So I don't know how many of you did experiments with little bacterial petri dishes, but you put them in there is some sort of material to feed them, and they grow. Eventually they run out of resources and air, and then they die, right? So this is a very basic biological experiment. This is another curve of a population. The little color that up to the blue one, that's total population. Full here agrees it looks kind of like at this stage as an exponential. I see like some hands. Yeah, kind of. All right, this is actually us. This is human population since the 1500s. And right now we are growing exponentially. Okay. I think the more you zoom in towards like 2020 to 2023, actually flattens out a little bit, but not that much, right? Which is just okay. But we can still flatten out even more, right? And I don't mean like kill people or like don't reproduce, right? I mean like if you reproduce per household like 10 children, and if everybody does that, it's gonna keep increasing a lot. And I do enjoy sounding like a villain from a Dan Brown movie, but things don't have to be that bad, right? We can still fix it. Another thing is our carbon footprints. Like I said, if we import everything, if we always order delivery, let's say, people driving to us, people driving to carry things from China to us, flying them, driving them, that creates a high burn of carbon in storage or driving or travel, things like that. So we really need to be mindful about this, also about just what kind of resources we use when we want electricity or water. So how can we remove it? We can always switch off things that we are not using. It really comes down to don't burn more energy than you need, right? If you can go to your office and work 50 people together in a room versus everyone working in their own separate buildings, that's probably better to do it as a group. But you also want some personal space, right? There's a sweet balance between that you can decide which is better for you. These are all the electricity sources and their emissions of pounds of carbon dioxide. Really what we want to do is we want to bring the wind and hydro, solar, and somehow the geothermal from Earth's core heat to cover the rest of this. The nuclear is a little bit, it's pretty green, but also very dangerous to humanity, so still under question. Although it is very high power source if we can make it safe for everybody. And this is what we can do. Right now we are here at the very bottom, and we can really come back up, right? This is just some hit to some data, right? We can always make it go up, right? It's really up to us. All of the people in this room can decide what you want to do, which energy sources you want to use personally. And as a summary of the challenges versus opportunities, choosing a circular mindset and reducing your carbon footprint can cost you a little more. If you want to shop locally all the time, right? Maybe it's a little more expensive than Amazon. But if you can do it, that will be better for the environment most of the time. It really takes a little bit of research of where your electric company gets their electricity, right? Do they use green sources, or are they just making deals with oil companies, right? This is something you can actually find out. And they may be less comforting and new, but they can really benefit the planet as the technology develops. I also want to mention, thank you to Protocol Labs for being here, letting us be here. And I know that their Filecoin green is researching technologies to store data in a green way. Just want to give some examples. KlimaDAO, they have a carbon credit system that benefits you the more carbon you remove from the planet. And Ripple funds these organizations that uses blockchain. So the more companies like this, the more opportunities there are out there, we can actually, I really believe that we can fix the carbon issue. Thank you. Here's a summary of everything that I showed. And here's the hopeful picture that I hope we can achieve. Thank you.
I think we have time for maybe one or two questions, if there are any audience questions.
Thanks, Colette, for the great talk. Really appreciate a lot of the subjects that are in here. I think a lot of folks are really interested in ways to kind of move the needle outside of individual changes. And I'm very curious about what kinds of insights you might have that might be really most impactful. When we look at climate data at the kind of aggregate, we kind of see, these are the countries that emit the most. These are the institutions that emit the most. And we kind of, try to make political discourse around that a lot. But I would love to know, from your perspective, what would be, by the numbers, the most tangible way to make change at scale rather than just at the individual. And I'm sure you could have spoken to it, but you have so many great topics here. Curious what your opinion is.
Thank you. I think I really believe in the carbon credit initiative. And, it's not the only one. There's a lot of other types of credits that I think governments can take them. The reason it didn't take off in the US is because we have a very capitalized market. But I think if we do it as governments and, reduce taxes if people are using more green resources, I think that will be very collective and really powerful. But there was one more question. Okay.
And the hopeful last slide, how did you share maybe power at the top and lots of it.
I think it maybe one of the first times I've seen an image showing the aspiration of a full recovery and then some. So that's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
This is from a research subject. I think I cited my research, but it's not my research, but I think there are more out there.
Just messaging that, you know, we can not only just stem this off and stop the problems we're seeing and the losses, but we could also see a recovering in growth. So that's really nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. If anybody has one? Well, I have one. You mentioned a lot of really cool projects, Ripple, Clean It Out. I'm curious if there's any more projects or people that you've met today that get you excited for this niche little world of blockchain and climate.
Yes. Actually, from the speaker reception yesterday, I met a bunch of people. There was someone from, I think, it's hard to remember, Zero. They are like a startup that are clean energy. I think a lot of the people I met yesterday were really, they were like individual parties, but I hope like we can all sort of come together at the end to work collectively. Yeah.